everyone. My name is Sonny. I'm the COO at ABC Florida East Coast Chapter. I want to welcome you to episode 13 of the Obvious Podcast.
And my name is Peter Daiga. I'm the president and CEO of the ABC Florida East Coast Chapter.
The Obvious Podcast is a production of ABC Florida East Coast. Unless otherwise stated, all content reflects the opinions of the hosts and the guests, and we're the hosts.
And if you like the Obvious Podcast, you can subscribe to it on all the major podcast platforms, such as Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or Spotify, among others. Or watch the audio-visual version on YouTube. You can also follow the Obvious Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. You can always reach out to us via email at theobvious@abceastflorida.com. Links to all the social media feeds are on this episode's show notes. And if you want to help others find the podcast, please leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice.
So, Peter, we are back on Zoom. We should probably let our audience know that the reason we're back on Zoom is because you are at a conference in Arizona.
Yes, annually in November, ABC holds a leadership conference where future leaders of our chapters come together. And we, as well as the chapter presidents, and it's a good time to coalesce about future plans and strategic plans and of the organization. And so, I'm out in Scottsdale.
So, Peter, there's been a lot happening in the world of politics. You know, I heard somebody say yesterday on TV that this administration is literally running 2 to 3 news cycles a day. You know, something exciting and interesting happens, and then while you're still processing that, something is happening. So today I thought we could talk about some of the cabinet picks that have happened. I know some people are very excited. Some people are despondent and ready to move to Iceland or Greenland or wherever people are talking about moving to. And then kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I know there's a huge component of this in terms of kind of what's happening with the Florida delegation, congressional delegation as well. So I wanted to get your opinion, so let's just start with a big one. The Secretary of State, our own Senator Marco Rubio, has been appointed. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, before I do that, let me just state, I think part of the reason why we're having these news cycles is because he's not appointing the typical recirculation of the same old, folks from this pool, that it seems like the Democrats got their own pool and Republicans have their own pool, and it's, rearranging the chairs, and whatnot. Had that been the case, maybe there'd be some news. But the reason this is 2 news cycles a day is because Trump, I think, is doing what he campaigned to do, which is be a disruptor.
Yeah.
He thinks there are some really bad problems within our government. There's no surprise here. None of this really should surprise anybody. In terms of the people he's appointing and the fact that they're different, right? They're outside so in any event, maybe Marco Rubio to a lesser extent, because he was kind of talked about, I think, a lot, as a potential Secretary of State. So
very pro-Israel, right? Very pro-Israel, extensive foreign policy chops. I think he's in the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Senate, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. So he's got a long history of being exposed to these issues and knowledge of them and whatnot. So I think he's going to be excellent. I think it's exciting, to not only have one of our own from Florida, but also I think he's the first Latino or Hispanic, appointee to the Secretary of State position, I think. So that's exciting.
I do want to make a point about your comment about recycling people. The current record for the oldest Secretary of Defense is held by Donald Rumsfeld, who was the Secretary of Defense under Bush. But Rumsfeld also holds the record for the youngest Secretary of Defense under Gerald Ford. So I think it's kind of interesting how
nothing drives that point home like that, Sonny. That's amazing.
To have the record for the youngest and the oldest, and it's under Republican administrations, and some would say he didn't leave under the best of terms with the way the Iraq issue was handled. But to your point, Pete Hegseth from Fox News, who I looked up his biography, 44 years old, Princeton undergrad, master's from Harvard, served over 2 decades. Did actual combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. and has written considerably about sort of the state of the military and has a lot of opinions on it. And I know, at first I was like, who? But then I realized maybe Trump had hit a nerve because there was a bunch of articles from defense lobbyists cited as sources losing their mind about Hexet getting in.
Yeah.
And the right away, the vociferous.
All of this whole process, and by the way, I love this time of transition, right? To me, it's a really exciting because I'm a believer, the president's the leader, but really what's done, are the people he or she surrounds himself with, right?
Yeah.
So it's so important. And, so I love, in a transition like this, when we're going to a new Republican government,
yeah,
the kind of decisions that are being made. So anyway, I love it.
I'm going to make one more point about irony, because you know how much I love irony. I remember, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat nominee for president.
This cycle, no? Was it this cycle?
Last cycle.
One before. 4 o'clock.
Yeah, one before. Being placed on some sort of a watch list by the government that she was consistently criticizing, right? When she was flying. And the fact that, this fascist Nazi president-elect chose to put her and make her the head of DNI, Director of National Intelligence, I think it's such great irony, right? In the sense of, because this current administration has a record of clearly hitting back at its political opponents, and you see it, and it's not just Trump, but you see it over and over again. They just raided the house of a guy who was running a website offshore on taking bets on the presidential election. I mean, it's insane to me.
Yeah, it's keeping up to this hour.
At this hour, even now, they're attacking. People.
Look, we're gonna continue to have from now until whenever all these nominations and confirmation hearings are held.
Yeah,
the renting of garments and screaming from the top of
touching the
establishment is not going to be happy with these people. But I just ask our followers and our listeners, I think he's doing exactly what he campaigned on. He's appointing disruptors. To your point about Pete, I was out at this conference when that nomination news hit. I think I was in a car, traveling from or to dinner in the evening. And the initial reactions, even in our circles, was shock.
Yeah.
I think even some of that's tapered down when you realize he's got quite a considerable list of credentials, for one.
Yeah.
But for two, when you realize what Trump is doing, appointing, disruptors, I think is the only way we're going to get change.
Yeah,
that he campaigned on, I think. So
it reminds me of your well-published editorial letter that I know made the rounds and was picked up by Yahoo News. And the title was, Trump is not a threat to democracy, but to bureaucracy. And you see that he campaigned on the fact that he will dismantle this massive $7 trillion bureaucracy. And he needs the right people to do that. And it seems to me that that's who he's bringing to the table. And so the establishment, right? I was watching CNBC this morning, and the former CEO of Walgreens was losing his mind over RFK Jr., right? Talking about how wonderful vaccines are and how wonderful the therapeutics are, and that how everything they've done over the last 100 years is in danger, right? To me, that's fascinating. Like HHS and one guy is going to be a threat to vaccines.
Right.
It's interesting that you see that from the military industrial complex, and now you're seeing it from the medical complex in terms of RFK and how they're kind of clutching their pearls and losing their minds. And it's fascinating to watch how the establishment reacts.
That's another one out in this conference. I've run into some people that expressed this concern as well, which it just shocks me because I'm a guy who watched I love politics. I watched a lot of, both sides, rallies and campaigns were a lot more on one side than the other to watch. But, there was no secret about RFK Jr.'s supposed role in an administration. I think, some people are talking right now about he is not getting as much credit as he probably should be for helping with this victory, in the coalition that was built. So let's not forget, what was the total? 81 million? Is that what it was?
81 points.
Million Americans voted for, and in a landslide in almost any way you slice this or cut it up or want to present it. So there's a strong public support for being a disruptive, a productive. What's the the word in management? About being a productive disruption. Right. And I think that's what Trump's doing.
Strategic disruption. All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. Very controversial pick, Matt Gaetz, Attorney General.
Yeah, that really, I guess, threw a lot of folks for a loop. A surprise. Everybody's talking about he's. I can't help but think, and there's the start of, I think, some conversation about this, that there's something bigger behind this whole move, something strategic. That President Trump, we've always felt, is playing chess while, his opponent was playing checkers at best.
Yeah.
So who knows what the real purpose of this is? Again, out here in an ABC conference, and when that news came out, there was, it's just like what you're seeing in public. There were a lot of people that were really surprised, even some of our Florida folks, and surprised, not in a positive way. Being and right out the gate being very negative, if you will, about that nomination. So, and I couldn't help, I blurted something out, I think, in conversation about, well, I guess we're going to really find out who the true MAGA fans are and who aren't. And I think I read an article this morning of somebody writing that they think this might have been Trump's attempt to, right at the beginning, find out what senators are going to be with him for the next 4 years and which are going to be against. He's going to find out. I don't know if that was his plan. I don't know if it was something, who knows? I have a feeling, Sonny, that a president, left or right, Democrat or Republican, has a right, provided there are no, extenuating circumstances that somebody shouldn't be in office.
Yeah.
They have a right to their nominees. It's his government. He's forming his government. So
I do find it interesting because I would have never expected a traditional Republican, right? And I'm thinking Mitt Romney, George Bush, those kind of guys, to ever have two Democrats in their cabinet, right? But this guy is definitely not a Bush, Romney Republican. I mean, he's a populist.
It's not so much having, I think, people from the other party in your cabinet, because we were talking earlier about the recirculation of people.
Right.
I think people have, in the past, on both sides, have picked other people that are at the center, to be, but that didn't really change a whole lot. And what's different about this time is these people, Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy, I wouldn't say are at the center of their party, and yet he's pulling them over to be as part of his cabinet, right? They're definitely representing a very disruptive, a very unique perspective, And again, I tried to reassure people out here, and having listened to a lot of the campaign rallies where Bobby spoke, he's not a guy, and he's just, I think, on TV saying it again, I'm not taking away anybody's vaccines, but I want to see the data. I want to have a good conversation in this country. I want to talk about why we're so unhealthy compared to other parts of the world. I want to talk about, so I think, we shouldn't be afraid in this country about a good conversation. I think that's kind of what we're missing in the last few decades, and I think we're about to have some good conversations in the next 4 years. So, what do you think of the Gaetz nomination, and what do you think's behind that? A lot of people too said this is the sacrificial lamb, right? So we think, makes all the other appointments, there's a lot of theories out there. So, but the one thing we think we know about Trump is he's a straight shooter. I think, I don't know, that's not to say he's not calculating. I think he's very much, again, a chess player. Someone who knows what was behind it. But what are your thoughts?
So on Gaetz specifically, I've heard that there is because there's been, as you know, salacious accusations and rumors about his behavior, personal behavior. And I've read that the House ethics report was about to come out, was days away. I know the senators are asking for it, but the one thing that he did right away was he resigned from Congress,
Right.
allowed DeSantis, our governor, to have the next election scheduled, the special election, and also for Mike Waltz, who's going to be the national security advisor.
Yeah. I mean, here's where I think, and these are the kind of things that convince me there's something more, which is it's fun to talk about, right? But there's something more behind this because look, it's going to come out anyway.
Right.
It's Washington, resigning the day before so that blah blah blah. It's going to come out anyway. It's probably going to come out. The Democrats are going to leak it.
All right.
I mean,
so the Republicans might. With him, you never know.
For sure. Exactly, to my point. I mean, everybody's going to leak it. I mean, to think that, resigning a day before the report, it's, if you couldn't get a nominee pass because of the other, by the way, sorry, the other irony is on a lot of my social media feeds with my left of center friends, it's everything sexual, everything right now. Talking, I'm just like, I went through the 90s, about with the Clinton stuff. Who got some pretty serious accusations leveled at him.
But we were told,
it's just personal.
Yeah.
It's just such a double standard over the years. And quite frankly, the world is full of sexual scandal, unfortunately. I mean, it just is, certainly you're not going to get a sympathetic ear in Trump or the people that voted for him to say that there's these accusations against you from the deep state or, from... You're just not, I mean, so he'll have to answer to that. I'm sure he'll probably be asked about it. It'll be great TV, but again, I feel like presidents are due, they're the cabinet that they want to serve. It's their government, so we'll see. The thing, the theory that just makes the most sense to me, Sonny, is truly, this is his way of, digging out who's going to be with him for the next 4 years and who isn't.
Yeah.
Right up front. So we'll see.
Yeah. It'll be fun. Well, it's been a great conversation. Thank you for listening and honoring us with your time. We look forward to sharing another episode with you very soon. I know you're asking for episodes that are quicker. I promise you we're trying to produce content as quickly as we can. So thank you very much for your time.
If you have any comments about our show, don't forget, you can always send us an email at theobvious@abceastflorida.com. All right, until next time, we'll see you again. Ciao.